Good day, everyone. I'm Miss Rose Ann A. Aplacador, and today we are going to talk about collective bargaining. We're going to learn the meaning of collective bargaining, characteristics of collective bargaining, the four types of activities in collective bargaining, five steps of collective bargaining process, and the three functions of collective bargaining. This lesson is from www.whatishumanresource.com/collective bargaining. So what is collective bargaining? Collective means group action, while bargaining means negotiating. Thus, it means collective negotiations between the employer and the employee relating to their work situations. The success of these negotiations depends upon mutual understanding and give-and-take principles between the employers and employees. The phrase collective bargaining is coined by famous authors Sidney and Beatrice Webb in their celebrated treatise on history of trade unions. Collective bargaining is a method of determining the terms and conditions of employment and settling disputes arising from those terms by negotiating between the employer and the employees, or their trade union. The very fact that the parties reserve the ultimate right to use economic weapons of strike and lockout helps in stimulating the parties to arrive at an agreement. What are the characteristics of collective bargaining? First, collective bargaining is a group process. Negotiations form an important aspect of the process of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a formalized process by which employers and independent trade unions negotiate terms and conditions of employment and the ways in which certain employment-related issues are to be regulated at national, organizational, and workplace levels. Collective bargaining is a process in the sense that it consists of a number of steps. Second characteristic of a collective bargaining is it is a bipartite process. This means there are always two parties involved in the process of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a complementary process. Collective bargaining tends to improve the relations between workers and the union on the one hand and the employer on the other. The third characteristic of collective bargaining is it is a continuous process. It uses cooperation and consensus for settling disputes rather than conflict and confrontation. Collective bargaining takes into account day-to-day changes, politics, potentialities, capacities, and interests. It is a political activity frequently undertaken by professional negotiators. Now let's learn about the four types of activities in collective bargaining. First is distributive bargaining. It involves haggling over the distribution of surplus. Under it, the economic issues like wages, salaries, and bonus are discussed. In distributive bargaining, one party's gain is another party's loss. This is the most commonly explained in terms of pie. Disputants can work together to make the pie bigger so there is enough for both of them to have as much as they want. Or they can focus on cutting the pie up, trying to get as much as they can for themselves. In general, distributive bargaining tends to be more competitive. This type of bargaining is also known as conjunctive bargaining. The next type of activities in collective bargaining process is integrative bargaining. This involves negotiation of an issue on which both parties may gain or at least neither party loses. For example, representatives of employer and employee sides may bargain over the better training program or a better job evaluation method. Here, both the parties are trying to make more of something. In general, it tends to be more cooperative than distributive bargaining. This type of bargaining is also known as cooperative bargaining. The third type of activity in collective bargaining process is the attitudinal restructuring. This involves shaping and reshaping some attitudes like trust or distrust, friendliness or hostility between labor and management. When there is a backlog of bitterness between both the parties, attitudinal restructuring is required to maintain smooth and harmonious industrial relations. It develops a bargaining environment and creates trust and cooperation among the parties. The last type of activity in a collective bargaining process that we are going to tackle today is the intra-organizational bargaining. It generally aims at resolving internal conflicts. This is a type of maneuvering to achieve consensus with the workers and management. Even within the union, there may be differences between groups. For example, skilled workers may feel that they are neglected, or women workers may feel that their interests are not looked after properly. Within the management also, there may be differences. Trade unions maneuver to achieve consensus among the conflicting groups. Let's now talk about 5 core steps of collective bargaining. First is prepare. Prepare. This phase involves composition of a negotiation team. The negotiation team should consist of representatives of both the parties with adequate knowledge and skills for negotiation. In this phase, both the employer's representatives and the union examine their own situation in order to develop the issues that they believe will be most important. The first thing to be done is to determine whether there is actually any reason to negotiate at all. A correct understanding of the main issues to be covered and intimate knowledge of operations, working conditions, and production norms and other relevant conditions is required. Second is discuss. Here, the parties decide the ground rules that will guide the negotiations. A process will begin is half done, and this is no less true in case of collective bargaining. An environment of mutual trust and understanding is also created so that the collective bargaining agreement would be reached. Third is propose. This phase involves the initial opening statements and the possible options that exist to resolve them. In a word, this phase could be described as brainstorming. The exchange of messages takes place and the opinion of both parties is sought. Fourth is bargaining. Negotiations are easy if a problem-solving attitude is adopted. This stage comprises the time when what-ifs and supposals are set forth and the drafting of agreements. And the last step is settlement. Once the parties are through with the bargaining process, a consensual agreement is reached upon wherein both the parties agreed to a common decision regarding the problem or the issue. This stage is described as consisting of effective joint implementation of the agreement through shared visions, strategic planning, and negotiated change. And the last topic for collective bargaining this morning is its 3 functions. So first important function of a collective bargaining is as a process of social change. Collective bargaining enhances the status of the working class in the society. Wage earners have enhanced their social and economic position in relation to other groups. Employers have also retained high power and dignity through collective bargaining. The second one is collective bargaining as a peace treaty. Collective bargaining serves as a peace treaty between the employers and employees. However, the settlement between the two parties is a compromise. And the third function of collective bargaining is as an industrial jurisprudence. Collective bargaining creates a system of industrial jurisprudence. It is a method of introducing civil rights into industry. It establishes rules which define and restrict the traditional authority exercised by employers over the employees, placing part of the authority under joint control of union management. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video about collective bargaining. I hope that you learn a lot.